This video started production long before the whole situation with the original developer. Screw the pastors that caused that, by the way. You don't deserve to play video games. Just know that I'm not trying to capitalize on any of that with this video. I wanted to have this video come out weeks beforehand, and I won't hold it against my editor, Jet Suzuki, sub to the fool, by the way, as he had his own life to worry about. Anyway, on with the show. I know. Chapter 2 is already out, and there's more to talk about, but there's something in particular I want to discuss regarding Chapter 1 of this game. The game in question is the Coffin of Andy Leyley. Christ, I don't even want to touch the second chapter just yet, because it adds so much to the lore already, and I told myself I would consider making this video long before Chapter 2 dropped. Unfortunately, I'm an idiot and passed the opportunity to talk about it. So, I'm going to talk about it a bit today. I was going to record my own footage for it, but I just ended up paying a whole bunch of bills, so I thought I would just wait and get the footage from elsewhere. I will of course credit the person that I got the footage from in the description and briefly on screen. In the story of the first chapter, Andrew and Ashley are siblings and are trapped in an apartment together after their town is quarantined due to some kind of parasitic outbreak, or at least they're part of town. The parasites barely come up in the second chapter from what I remember, which is incredibly suspicious. I don't recall if they do anything in particular, but they do seem to at least be contagious. We learn that Ashley and Andrew's relationship is not the healthiest. Ashley is your textbook narcissist, and Andrew is her enabler. The thing is, throughout the story, it seems like you're supposed to be very sympathetic of Andrew due to the fact that Ashley treats him very harshly despite his undying servitude. And we even learn in Chapter 2 that he's the one who's been the kindest to her even when compared to their parents. Yeah, remember when I said I wouldn't be bringing up Chapter 2? Yeah, disregard that actually. Seems it'll be coming up more often than I expected it to. Anyway, this relationship between them doesn't come out of nowhere. We learn that the reason Andrew puts up with Ashley is due to an error they made back in the day when they were much younger. Andrew and Ashley, known by their nicknames as Andy and Leyley, accidentally trapped his girlfriend in a chest, and this led to her untimely death due to an asthma attack. Let me start off by saying that I don't think Andy nor Leyley should be given the death penalty for this. As much as I hate children, they were far too young to know what they were doing, and should have been under better care by their parents. Now, I was going to leave the parents alone, but it seems to put this event into better perspective, I have to give a better synopsis as to just how putrid Mr. and Mrs. Graves are, and how it is a direct parallel to Andrew and Ashley's relationship. Almost as if the idea of the second chapter altogether is showing how history is practically repeating itself. Mrs. Graves is a monster. Remember when I ranted about how terrible the mother was in Bondi's barnyard? The BK is always so sad when we see him, and the mother made it seem like going to go see Bondi was some special occasion. Knowing how neglectful she is, she probably didn't even want to let him go, and only did so because it was his birthday and felt some sort of obligation to let it happen. She didn't even have the common decency to take him up there herself. The animatronics, the night guard, even Cobb being unaware of how easily the kid could die within her. The biggest offender of this entire story is the mother. To the point where, in the custom night mode, you can actually make the mother show up to the barnyard, only to fucking kill you. This woman is pure evil. While that video isn't the best, I was given confirmation that the section talking about how terrible the mother was is actually spot on. So, if nothing else, I know a thing or two about shitty mothers. Mrs. Graves had Andrew first, and since he was such a quote-unquote easy child, as she put it, she didn't think having another child would be that big of a deal. For starters, that's a terrible reason to have a child. And apparently, she had Andrew so ridiculously young, and didn't have Ashley that long after. Having sex so young is already a huge issue that I won't get into, but that alone isn't the problem. You had a child and had little issue. Why would you assume that a sibling would be a cardboard cutout of him? This is an issue I had growing up too. I won't be very specific, as it's really no one's business, but let's just say that line from Mrs. Graves rubbed me the wrong way. Not that anything she says is worth a damn anyway. Mrs. Graves, who I'll dub Lisa for the time being because I hate writing that out in the script so many times, is an avid liar, scammer, and narcissist herself, to the point that she has the same mischievous scowl that Ashley has. When Andrew and Ashley finally find her in Chapter 2, it's very obvious that she isn't happy to see them. Considering all the money she got from faking their deaths after the apartment building the kids were left in blew up, I could see why now the idea of having to be a parent again would annoy her, especially considering the social life she has with her parents and the hot BDSM sex she constantly has with Anthony. That's what I'm calling the dad. Yet she still has the audacity to demand parental respect from the children she even admitted to raising terribly. Anthony isn't much better. He's an enabler through and through, and this is something I see in real life where a lot of men, and just a lot of partners in general, will just go along with what their woman tells them no matter what. Before I get too far with him, I need to go back to Andrew. And rest assured, most of Andrew's flaws seem to be directly passed down from his father, to the point where Andrew acknowledges it at one point. After the death of his girlfriend at the park, Andy is convinced that he's not only a bad person, but that he will be going to prison for the rest of his life and will lose his sister altogether as a result of this. Of course, he believes this. He's a kid. He's stupid. Even to the point where Leyley doesn't have any objections to his confirmation. In fact, he uses it as leverage against him, as a way to assure that he will always be in her life after this point. Which is redundant considering we know for a fact that Andy has almost always been by her side, to the point that Leyley has pretty much taken the overprotective girlfriend role most of their life, threatening all his other love interests and clinging on to him like most of my past flings. Like, Jesus, this shit hit too close to home for me. I'm not going to touch much on Julia because it's very obvious that she's going to be fleshed out way more in episode 3. So for now, I'm going to lump her in with the others and just assume that she's yet another girl that Ashley chased away. There's obviously going to be more to it than that, so take it with a grain of salt. Then again, I could say that about this entire synopsis, as I'm still not 100% convinced that this is going to be completely played straight, but more on that later. Anyway, this event pretty much pushes all of this into motion. This avid jealousy that Leyley harbors festers more and more over time. And the thing is, this still isn't on Andrew. It's on Lisa and Anthony. Where the hell were they when this event took place? Hell, the kids were apparently so good at hiding the event, which I don't buy in the slightest because children have a habit of running their mouths without thinking, even if they do really believe that they'll get in trouble, that Lisa doesn't even completely know what happened with Andrew's ex, and just claims that she knows the two were involved. Lisa is such a shit mother. It's obvious that this event scarred Andrew heavily, but this situation is more tragic than it seems to be on the surface. See, when you're in a toxic relationship with someone, you often don't realize it. You love the person you're with so much that you see their negative behavior as them acting out instead of what it actually is. This negative activity, the lashing out, the insults, whether you like it or not, this is what they are. This is their true self. And the fact that they're willing to treat you this way, the person that they claim to love more than anything else, tells you that they don't love you enough to change, or at the least fake it for you. And that's really sad. Ashley is a vile creature, and the game even points it out. Demons can tell that Ashley is a terrible person, but Andrew either can't or stopped caring. He's been given this false perspective from his sister that because of what happened in the past, he will always be a terrible person and that he is incapable of changing, incapable of having a normal life, incapable of having a happy family. But a lot of those aspects are actually out of his control. He can't make his sister be a decent human being. He can't make his parents care. He can't make people like him, and he most definitely can't change the past. Sure, we would probably be chanting for Andy to just tell his parents the truth, but there are a couple of issues with this. Not only are his parents shit people who are willing to just cover it up anyway, but he's a kid. He didn't have the capacity to think any of this through. Object pertinence doesn't exist in his mind. All he knew was that he helped kill someone, and his sister threatened to squeal, which would land him in prison forever, and he'd never see his sister or any of these other friends again. That's all there is to it for Andy. There are steps he's missing, but as far as he knows, those extra steps don't exist. However, Andrew isn't completely a victim in this. Nor is Anthony. It gets to a point where putting up with a toxic partner can very much ruin your life. And that's the main point I want to make with this video. Choosing to stay the victim can very easily lead you into being a perpetrator. Andrew was pretty faultless at the start of chapter 1. He watched over his sister, got angry when men leered at her, tried to conserve the food they had left, and kept as calm as possible when Ashley was being herself. However, there is one event that changed his status, and that was the first murder he committed. We could argue where Andrew's downward spiral began. It could be when he ate the dead cultist. It could be when he killed the guard that almost found Ashley in the cultist's apartment. It could be when he killed the lady from upstairs that Ashley figured he wanted to smash. That's not really the point here. The point is that Andrew slowly became more and more accustomed to doing gruesome things, and that is honestly a chilling parallel of reality. The idea of not searching for your children after they're presumed dead was probably something Anthony never even thought of before ever meeting Lisa. And that's something that I'm sure anyone watching this could never even dream of. The concept of scanning money out of the government using the life insurance of kids that could still be alive. Having 2 children at so young. Perhaps at one point, Anthony actually had a backbone. This goes double for Andrew. But you cannot defend either of them. Not as they are now. Whether you want to believe in the reality of this or not, it doesn't matter. Andrew is a monster. His circumstances are unfair. His sister is an evil witch pulling his strings. His parents are disgusting and selfish. The world around him is harsh and unfair. I'm not saying he isn't justified in his actions, and he hasn't been acting out of a desire for survival, but he's too far gone to really be labeled as a good person. Not anymore. Not after everything that's happened. But the way I see it, this entire world is pretty monstrous, and so does labeling him as that really mean anything? No, I don't think it does. And I think that's why, despite all the things I said about him, I still really like Andrew. I feel like I could definitely have ended up in his position if I didn't grow up and learn not to depend on other people as much as he does. And this isn't such a far-fetched scenario. It would be incredibly easy to fall into destructive behavior if you're surrounded by destructive people. And the sad part is, Andrew didn't have to go through anything he did. This falls on the shoulders of his parents and his sister for him coming up the way that he did. But once he became an adult, at some point he had to put his foot down. He had to talk to someone, whether it be Julia or someone at school. He needed to tell the truth. He needed to confess what he had done to someone and get some closure so that they could hopefully reassure him that what happened wasn't his fault. At some point, you can't be the victim anymore. And I know people don't like to hear that. Bear in mind, this isn't victim blaming. Victim blaming would be telling the victim that the things that were out of their control were their own fault. But that's not what I'm saying at all. Ashley, Anthony, Lisa, the guards at the quarantined apartment, those were all terrible people, and I will not shed a single tear for any of them. I really do hope Ashley gets what's coming to her in chapter 3. I really fucking do. Everything those people did to Andrew were not his fault whatsoever, and he didn't deserve any of it. But there were moments where Andrew should have left Ashley behind. He should have broken away and fended for himself. Even if he was worried about an investigation after the dead body had been left behind by the demon, his chances would have still been better because ever since he decided to stay with Ashley after the fact, things have only gotten worse. Sure, maybe he assumed things would get better, but making assumptions isn't exactly foolproof. And at the end of the day, that still falls on him as the older brother. Sure, Ashley doesn't respect him, even though I feel he's well earned her respect. But that's how younger siblings are sometimes. Sometimes nothing is ever enough. His habit of overthinking honestly would have been great there. I said all that to say this. You can't be a victim forever. Love has limits. This romanticization of trying to fix people and believing that someone will change just because they're dicking you down is absolutely ludicrous and unhealthy. That isn't exactly the relationship Andrew and Ashley have, but it's pretty darn close. People don't change. They just get old. Not saying they can't. They won't change. When you get to a certain age, people tend to stop listening and believe that they will always have the answers, despite time ticking on and circumstances shifting all the time around them. You can love someone as much as you want, but you can't make them love you back. Love is an action word, and Ashley has made it very obvious that she doesn't love him one bit. No one that loves someone would treat them the way she does. And that goes double for anyone you'd be in a relationship with. What someone says is moot when put against what someone does. That's what truly matters. I feel for anyone that's in a toxic relationship, as I've been in many, and this game in particular fills me with many emotions. It's honestly one of my favorites from this entire year. It's Doki Doki Literature Club all over again. Yeah, my H-User era fans will know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're in a relationship with someone and love them, think for yourself if you're willing enough to become a monster for them. Thinking about what that person can push you to do or say. Is that person asking you to change yourself, to steal or cheat? Are they hooking up with someone behind your back? Do they give you as much as you give them? Do they even like you? If those questions make you feel uncomfortable, then maybe you should really consider walking away. But I'm not a therapist, nor do I want to be. I'm just a man speaking from experience with people who claim to love me, only making my days worse as a result. Don't end up like Andrew and start to see driving off a pier as a sweet release compared to the harsh reality he lives in. Be better. I want to also make a note that I think there's going to be a crazy twist at the end of this game. And I want it on record that I said it here and now. Even if I'm wrong, I still think this would be a strong enough twist to really solidify this entire story and change everyone's perspective on the entire game and Andrew as a character. I think Ashley is dead. Or at the very least, she never existed to begin with. There's something really otherworldly about how she acts, how she conveniently doesn't care about the consequences of main events in the game, or how often Andrew is the one killing people for her, or how when you get a bad end as Ashley, Andrew always dies immediately after, or even how Ashley is the only one who gets the crazy visions, or at the very least the only one we see physically partaking in the crazy visions. I would have to go through the entire game to double check every single one of these facts, and the topic of topic relationships is what I really care about here, so again, have your salt ready. I just ended up considering this while making this script. Nevertheless, this game is amazing and really makes you think. And I'd love to have a discussion with all of you in the comments about what you think this game is trying to say. But for now, I think the best takeaway from this is to be careful who you confide in. Be careful who you call your lover. And please, for the sake of yourself and those around you, grow a damn backbone.